I send the message.
Okay. And we go ahead and let the participants in. I think we did.
You want me to admit them?
Okay, so we're just waiting. Okay, got it. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's month of service presentation of property taxes, exemptions, and payment options. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service collaboration. Also included is the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today, we have Ms. Rachel Gutierrez. Also, on behalf of our presenting partners with the Harris Central Appraisal District, we have Ms. Mabel Menifee. And we will be having a representative, I believe, from the Harris County Tax Assessor and Collector's Office. But in addition to that, we also have included in the partnership is Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Houston Bar Association, the Earl Carl Institute, Texas Legal Services Center, and did I forget anybody? Was that all 9? I believe that was all 9 of every.
HBO.
Yes, at Houston Volunteer. Oh, and Lone Star Legal Aid. Okay, and collectively, we make up a month of service. And basically what a month of service is the collaboration of all 9 of our organizations. We come together each month and offer a variety of different workshops, resources, information to the community relative to asset building, asset protection, and the maintaining of generational wealth and community empowerment. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there that don't have access to a lot of information and don't know where to go for available resources. So we decided collectively to come together several years ago in the hopes to create a larger impact and reach more people and get more information out to the community. By collaborating so that we can do just that, considering we do service the same community and have the same similar goals and missions in mind. So we want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Do note that we are streaming live on our social media platforms on YouTube as well as on Facebook. But this is your opportunity to ask whatever questions that you have of the presenters that are here today to provide you with this information. We just ask that you try to keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can. Because we are streaming live, we don't want your personal detail information kind of getting out there. Like don't, give us your address or anything like that. We want to try to protect your privacy as much as we possibly can. However, there is someone that is monitoring the chat that you can type your information or they can answer your questions directly. Or you can also unmute yourself at the end of the presentation and we can have your questions answered aloud there as well. For the folks that are joining us here in person, we ask your questions, we'll ask of the presenters, and then, we'll have them answered that way. If you are joining us on the social media sites, feel free to type your questions or comments into the chat section, in the comment section, and we can make sure that your questions are read aloud there as well. So again, we want to thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start with brief introductions. We're going to have Ms. Rachel Gutierrez go first.
Thank you, Nia. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. As Nia mentioned, my name is Rachel Gutierrez. I am a community outreach coordinator for the Department of Neighborhoods Office of Neighborhood Engagement. We welcome you this afternoon to the Month of Service Program workshop. It's important for us to stay engaged with the community, to provide free educational resources to the community. So it's our pleasure to be able to provide this service to the community. We're thankful for the support that we received throughout the years, and we hope to keep you engaged. And we are excited that we are now starting our in-person workshops. So we are wanting to, be more engaged in person as well as virtual. So we thank you for tuning in person and online. Also, we want to stress the importance of getting the information out there. Please share amongst your close networks, whether it's at work, whether it's in your faith institutions, whether it's at the gym, the community center, the grocery store. If some of the workshops don't pertain to you specifically, it could be a possibility that someone that it could affect, or that somebody that could benefit from it. So we kindly ask that you share the information amongst those individuals, that we surely appreciate it. The topic for today, if you are a homeowner or know somebody that's a homeowner, property, everybody wants to come live in Texas, but the property taxes kill us, right? So we want to make sure that you deal with them. You deal with those property taxes, you get those exemptions, you put that money back into your pocket versus losing that money and missing out on opportunities to save, especially in the economy that we're in today. So we're thankful for the partners for volunteering their expertise and their time to do this. And we want to continue being a beacon for you guys. So thank you so much and enjoy the workshop.
Okay, Ms. Mabel, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I sure will. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mabel Menifee. As Nia said, I'm with the Harris Central Appraisal District, and we've been a part of this collaboration now for, I guess, a couple of years. I think we, as well as having been out to Sunnyside a number of times to present to you in person through some of our other workshops. So we always try to present additional information wherever we can. And then in other cases, sometimes you may hear something sometimes folks might hear something 2 or 3 times before it kind of sinks in terms of how it's relevant for them. So that's one of the reasons we like to continue to do these monthly, not to mention the fact that realizing it's as you listen, that's another neighbor may be in a situation that you're hearing about, and you can always share that information with them. I'm on the call this afternoon with my colleague, Donna Pensick, who is a customer service specialist. Hi, Donna, in our communications department. And the reason Donna's kind of a content expert on a number of the things, or she works in that every day. And so she'll be able to answer your questions, or at least most of your questions. And then, of course, if there are any that we cannot answer, we'll be more than happy to get back with you and provide you with an answer. So please feel free to, you can type your questions in the chat, or we usually open this up afterwards, after the presentations, for you to actually ask your questions through audio. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation today. And hopefully my Zoom and computer is working properly. So let me go ahead and get started on this. And let's see, can you guys, I don't want to do this again. It's already up there, Nia. Can you guys see it?
No, we
Nope.
cannot.
Okay, well, then I'm going to have to do it.
You got to hit the green share button.
It's blue now. Okay, there we go.
It's loaded. It's loading.
It's loading.
Now we got it.
All righty, perfect. That worked. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And just to kind of give everybody a little bit of background on property taxes and why we pay them, and why they typically play an outsized role here in Texas. It's because Texas doesn't have a state income tax. You hear people, they tell people as they promote the state a lot of times, oh, Texas doesn't have a state income tax. They fail to say often, though, but a lot of it's made up through their property taxes. Because why are property taxes necessary? Local taxing units like your schools, your hospitals, your city services use that tax revenue. That's their main source of income for providing all of the local services that we have come to rely on. One thing I want you to remember to kind of keep in mind too is that all of the property tax laws that are part of the Texas Property Tax Code originate with our state legislature. So our representatives and our state senators are the ones who gather around and create the rules. And appraisal districts such as HCAT are then charged with carrying those out or administering those laws. The state agency, once that all happens, the bill is passed and it's put into action. It usually goes through the state comptroller's office. So if there's one state agency that tends to have a regular oversight over appraisal districts, it's going to be the office of the Texas State Comptroller's Office. And just so that you know, there is a appraisal district in each and every county. And their role is to value and appraise all the property in that county, whether it be residential, commercial, apartment buildings, shopping centers, etc., agricultural, farmlands, industrial, big plants and things you see, or the business personal, which is a part of the process of owning and the equipment used to make money in a business. We're required to do so. We're required to appraise that at 100% of market value each year as of January the 1st. And why is January the 1st an important date? That's because the valuation of that property is going to be based on the condition of it on January the 1st of each year. So a lot of times people will say, will say that, well, my property, something happened to it. I had a fire and one of the rooms burned down, or I had a flood. If that took place after January the 1st, January the 5th even, the value is still going to be set on how the property was set on January the 1st. If by any chance that full year rolls around and those repairs still haven't been taken care of, then that's when you would see a value reduction because of the damage or whatever that had happened to that property during the previous year. The other thing that HCAD does is that we administer exemptions. And we're going to talk about that, just kind of go over those to make sure that you're all getting the exemptions that you're entitled to, because that is the best way to save money. If you don't have those exemptions, and you're eligible for them, then you are giving away money that you should not have to give away. We also do something called certifying the appraisal rolls. And that's what all of the taxing jurisdictions have to wait on us to do, usually around August or so, which is the official passing of the property tax roll to these jurisdictions saying, okay, we've appraised all this value in the county and here is what it is worth, or we've appraised a large percentage of it, and here is what it is worth. You, the city of Houston, you, Harris County, can now go ahead and figure out what your budgets need to be based on that appraisal roll, and then set your tax rate. So it's important to remember HCAT does not tax anyone. We provide the value so that the jurisdictions can then set their tax rates and assess the taxes. So just some important dates. I think I've gone over these already. January 1st being the date of appraisal, May 15th usually being the protest deadline when you get that letter from us, usually that valuation letter, which usually goes out in March or early April. And usually that's going to mean you have May 15th as the day to protest it. We call it protesting. It can be called an appeal, but whatever, it means you disagree with what we've said your value is. So you have the right to protest and have an opportunity to prove that HCAD's valuation is wrong. And you usually can do that by May 15th if you get your letter timely, which is usually between late March and early and mid-April. If you get it later, you always have 30 days from the date of the notice to file your protest. So be sure to keep that in mind. And then, of course, we're approaching that season when tax bills are going to be mailed out. We've already certified with the jurisdictions. And then, of course, you'll receive those tax bills usually around November or so. And by February the 1st, if they have not been paid, they become delinquent. Again, just as HCAD and all, and the other 230 some odd appraisal districts in Texas, however many counties there are, they're required by the tax code to be at 100% of market value or as close to that as possible. And we're kind of great. We are graded on that by the state that does a biennial market value study to make sure that we are in compliance with that. Again, how do we conduct that appraisal process? We do it through mass appraisal, as well as making sure that the value, how we value the property, is going to be based on the sales in that area. And right now for HCAD, we are the largest appraisal district really in the country that appraises on an annual value. On an annual basis. We are responsible for appraising 1.9 million parcels of property. And although you may only pay taxes to 4 or 5 jurisdictions, because those are the number generally in where you live, keep in mind that there are over 500 taxing jurisdictions in Harris County. So depending on where you live, you pay to different jurisdictions. You may pay to certain emergency districts, or management districts, improvement districts, municipal utility districts that we call MUDs, as well as hospital districts, etc. So all of those taxing jurisdictions are typically spread throughout the county. Just a quick look at, I know you guys have seen this before. This is the notice that you receive from us each year for the property tax. It's your value, it's the valuation notice. Once you receive this, you are noticed for your property value that year. And this letter simply states what your value, what the market value of your property is, what HCAD had appraised it, had set the market value based on sales or whatever, and other factors in your particular area, as well as what your appraised value is. And it's important to remember that the appraised value, which is why we put it here at the top, is the value that you will pay taxes on, not the market value, but the appraised value. And the appraised value generally is going to, if you have exemptions, the appraised value is generally going to be lower than the market value because it subtracts your exemptions. It provides that 10% cap, I should say, that you get as part of your general resident or over 65 exemption. And it also and so that's what you want to make sure that you have. That's one of the reasons you want to make sure that you have the exemption. So let's go to the annual value notice. Again, just kind of to make sure we hammer this home. When you see your appraised value, that is the number that's used in calculating your tax bills. It could be the same as market value, particularly if it's a rental property, or you've been a rental property, or you don't have an exemption, I should say. Or it may be lower because you're going to get that 10% appraisal cap a lot of times when values rise. And what that 10% appraisal cap is simply means that as a homestead, you're going to be protected from those rapidly rising values, something we saw a lot of in the last 3 or 4 years, where we've seen property values increase 10, 15, 20, 30, sometimes even 40%, just depending on where you live. If you lived in one of those hot parts of town where people wanted to live or move into, in a lot of cases, those values were rising rapidly. And so that 10% appraisal cap keeps your market value from going up more than, keeps your appraised value from going up more than 10% in a given year. So it slows those down and for homeowners. The market value, that's what HCAD determines, and that's going to be the value at which a property would sell to for a willing buyer. It has to be on the open market. It's not going to be sales where one relative might sell it to another relative. those are not necessarily considered market transactions. But it has to be an arm's length business transaction when it's considered to be on the open market. And it has to be out there for a certain amount of time. Protest, again, another important thing to remember. Next spring, when you get your valuation notice, if you're interested in protesting, remember that protests are going to be based on that market value and not on the appraised value. So unless you can get the market value reduced below that appraised value, you're not going to see a savings on your taxes. What you may see is an eventual savings because you kick back that market value for another year. And when the time comes the following year, it's going to be a little bit lower. So some people may use that as a strategy, but just it's important to remember because we have a lot of people that'll say, well, I protested and I got my value reduced, but I didn't save anything on taxes. And that's because the market value was reduced. However, it did not fall below the appraised value. So the paper form, how quickly, if you're interested in protesting next year, and we encourage people to always protest because generally, if you've got a good reason why your property value needs to be reduced, keep in mind, we don't necessarily know what's inside your house or what's going on inside of your house. Our values are going to be based on what similar homes, same size, square footage, age, and things like that, what they are selling for. Chances are most of those folks are you're gonna fix it up some before you get ready to sell it. Who knows? You might put new cabinets, you might redo the kitchen or whatever. So you may not have done that in your home. You can't sell it for that price. So it's always important to stop and consider if you'd like to protest your taxes that year. You can do it a number of ways through iFile, which is something that you can do online. You can also opt into something called iSettle, which is really easy. You file it, your protest, and you can just say, okay, you can submit some information if you like, and you can say, okay, HCAT, I'm sending this information to you, and if the district will take a look at it, our appraisers will take a look at it, and if in fact they can take that information and have good reason to lower it, they'll send you an offer. If they don't have enough information, they may say they can't offer you a solution. In which case, if you iSettle and you get an offer, then that kind of takes the place of something we call an informal hearing, which is when you could go and talk one-on-one with an appraiser. If we can't offer you a settlement through iSettle, you still have the opportunity to come in and talk with an appraiser. You can do that virtually or in person. If in fact you did not accept the iSettle because you opted into that piece, then you still have an opportunity to have a formal hearing with the Appraisal Review Board. And that's the board of basically citizens from around Harris County that apply and are selected to participate in panels, kind of much like a jury of your peers kind of format. And they will hear your side of the story, they'll hear HCAD's side of the story, and then they make decision on the value reduction. You can also do that virtually or in person. If in fact you go through those steps and you're still not satisfied with your value, there are other additional methods that you can opt into, including arbitration and litigation and that sort of thing. Just remember, that's when it does start costing you money, putting money down to go through those additional processes. So just quickly too, let's talk a little bit about exemptions. I mentioned to you how much money, how you should always have these, how they can save you money, and how can you get them. We administer them here at HCAD, and they basically exempt a portion of the property's value from taxation. And that's for your primary residence, only your primary residence. You cannot have more exemptions on more than one property. These again are used by taxing authorities in calculating your tax bill. Some of they exclude a part of your property from taxation, let's say, you'll see some examples of this later on, but the taxation for, let's just say, a jurisdiction offers $100,000 taxation. Your home is worth $300,000. You get that $100,000 taxation, that $100,000 exemption rather. Then you're only going to be taxed on $200,000 worth of value as opposed to the full 300,000, and that's what some jurisdictions may offer. We'll talk a little bit about what some of the jurisdictions do offer. City of Houston, Harris County, and some of the others. The other exemptions, I mentioned the general resident homestead. There's one called an over 65 exemption, which can be tacked on to your general resident homestead exemption once you turn 65. Then there's the over 55 surviving spouse, which kind of fits into if in fact, we'll talk about that one too. And then the disability exemption, which is a lot like the over 65 exemption. There are some disabled veterans exemptions and other service related exemptions as well. Basically for your general resident homestead exemption, all you need to do is own and occupy the home as your primary residence. We do require documentation for that, which means basically you need to prove of ownership. And we also require, just to make sure you are occupying that home by law, we do require a copy of your Texas driver's license, and the address on the license has to match that of the property. Keep in mind, if it's jointly owned by Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, then we need the driver's license of both persons in order to provide that exemption. And why is that important? It's because it avoids any delay in getting that exemption process. We're usually required by law now to do that within 90 days. But if you don't submit all of the documentation at once, it can get pushed back further. So please keep that in mind. The general resident homestead exemption, the one exemption that everyone gets now is the $100,000 school tax exemption, and that's required by state law. You all may remember having voted for that in last November during a referendum when the school taxes went from a $40,000 exemption to a $100,000 exemption. Other exemptions, as I said, are going to be offered by various jurisdictions. Just kind of depends on the city, county, depends on where you live in the county. If anyone's ever interested or they're planning to purchase a home and kind of want to know what the taxes look like, I recommend that you go out on our HCAT website, and we have the taxing percentages of all the jurisdictions that you can go out there and look at. A lot of times when you're trying to get that loan, the mortgage loan, then the taxes can make all the difference in the world in terms of whether or not you're going to qualify for it. So we encourage people to go out there and make sure that you are moving to a district where taxes are affordable for you at that time. So the over 65 and disability exemption, you qualify for that the year you turn 65, the entire year. You can turn 65 on December 30th of this year. You will get that exemption for the entire year of 2024. The disability exemption, as I mentioned, is very much like that, kind of goes hand in hand with it. You qualify for that the year that you become eligible to receive disability under the Social Security Administration, the Disability Federal Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance Act. And a lot of people may not be on Social Security and they still qualify. Then they can also provide a physician statement verifying that they are disabled and unable to work. And you can actually find that physician statement. There is a form on our website for that as well. The benefits of having these two exemptions, I mentioned you get some substantial cuts or discount exemptions off of your taxes. You also get something called a school tax ceiling or freeze that year that you turn 65, whatever your school taxes were for that year, they're going to freeze at that amount. They're not going to go above that amount. They could go lower if your value were to fall, but the only way they're going to go higher is if you do something to the property where you're gonna add substantial value, such as you're gonna add square footage, or you're gonna put a tennis court or swimming pool out in the backyard, then that value would need to be recalculated, go up somewhat before the ceiling gets reset. The all of the exemptions under the general resident homestead, the cap, et cetera, you continue with, and you're also going to be eligible for something called a tax deferral. You can also pay taxes in installments with that over 65 exemption, and you don't pay penalties for that. The other exemptions can, and then there are other exemptions that may be granted by, again, the individual jurisdictions for people over 65. I think the tax office is going to talk to you a little bit more about that. I believe we have Shay with us today, and so they're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. But just to kind of give you an idea, those are some of the benefits of over 65 and disability exemptions, and why. And before I turn this page, I want to also mention to folks that, you know, there's a lot of misconception out there among some of our property owners that they get the tax deferral piece and the general and the over 65 exemption mixed up sometimes. Kind of gets mixed around in the conversation. The tax deferral is something that you can opt into once you turn over 65, that you do not have to pay taxes on your property because you are postponing them down the road. That means you can still pay if you'd like, or they can be postponed, and then once the property changes hands, such as the primary homeowner passes away, or they sell the property, then those taxes become due. That's a deferral. A over 65 general resident homestead exemption, which offers substantial benefits, is something that you will eligible for. That's the discount is going to be taken off of your taxes each year, and you are not responsible for paying any of that back as long as you are qualified to receive it. So please keep that in mind when someone might say, I don't want that over 65 exemption because I don't want my kids to have to pay that money back. That's not the over 65 exemption. That's something completely different called a deferral. And you'll hear a little bit more about that later on. Again, the over 55 just means that if the spouse under which the couple were receiving the over 65 exemption passes away, the surviving spouse is not 65 yet, but she's at least 50. He or she is at least 55. They will continue with those. Same exemptions. It's always important to kind of just check in with HCAT if something like that happens, because we don't always have the birth date of the owners to make sure that you are receiving, to make sure that you continue to receive that. But just know that it is available, and you probably want to check on that if your situation changes in that way. Another one that I'd like to go over with you, the airship exemption. That's one that's part of when you fill out that application on our website for the general resident homestead exemption, there's a section 3 in there that when you answer the questions, it says resident homestead exemption application. There's going to be a question in there that says, is this the property for which this application submitted an air property? And you would check. If you check yes and do other heirs own and occupy the property, yes. If you do that, then we're going to need some additional information, some affidavits from the other heirs, because keep in mind you don't own that property 100%. But you're the one living there. You're probably taking care of it. You may have, if it's siblings that are heirs to it, those siblings may be off living in their own homes with their names on it and getting their own homestead exemption. So it's a way to make sure that the heir living in the home is treated fairly in terms of being able to receive that homestead exemption. There's some things that we require to make sure that we can do that. Death certificates, a copy of the property's most recent utility bill. Want to make sure somebody's still living there. any court records that you can provide that cite your interest in the ownership if they're available. And then some other additional information that is on that form. If you have questions about it and you want to apply for it, please call our exemptions department. They will be more than happy to walk you through it. But this is very important, particularly in some of the mature neighborhoods or areas where parents may have passed away without leaving a will. So there are a number of heirs. And so we want to make sure that the property is still maintained in that family name. This is an important piece to consider. The immediate resident homestead exemption. This is something that's fairly new. It started in 2022 for folks that were moving into their homes, and they may have moved into it during the year. It used to be January the 1st was when you first became eligible for an exemption, to apply for the exemptions. Now, if you move in, you can qualify immediately upon occupying the home if it is new construction where there was no previous owner, or it was rental property where there was no previous exemption on the property. In this case, if you're purchasing a home where the previous owner maintained the exemption, then you will not be eligible until the following year. But keep in mind, you're taking advantage, you will be able to take advantage of the exemption that the homeowner already had on the property. So for some folks, like you're 35 and you just bought a house, and the folks you bought it from were over 65 and receiving that exemption, you are getting a heck of a discount that first year because of what was already on the house. Now, in case the homeowner takes that exemption with them, you're still not eligible till the following January. But this is an exemption that if you are purchasing a new home, you definitely want to take advantage of, because you'll get that prorated rate for that first year. For instance, if you move in May, then you're going to get that 8 months or that 7 months of exemptions. So how do you apply for them? Number of ways. You can just mail the paper form. It's also online. It's fillable online. You can fill it out on our mobile app, or you can email it in through and just pull it off the website. So depending on when it was submitted, the processing time may take longer. There's certain times of the year when lots of exemptions come in, but typically you're gonna hear from us in 90 days or less, unless you you don't send in some specific information that we then have to go back and ask you to provide. That can cause a delay. Once we apply to your account, you're going to be notified. Oh, and by the way, if this sounds confusing, there is a how-to video available on our website. You can actually go to the section where the form is and actually follow this video as you fill out the form. So that kind of hopefully will provide some reminders and tell you to make sure you include this or that. So you can take advantage of that as well. This is an annual exemptions confirmation card. Besides the annual value notice that homeowners get, they also get this card from us annually if they have exemptions. And it's typically mailed in December or early January. And it just reaffirms what the exemptions are on your property. If you do not have them or something has changed that year, this is a good reminder to say that you need to contact the district to make sure that you change your record in terms of you may not be eligible for an exemption if you just inherited or received the property from a relative and they may have been getting the over 65. Perhaps you're not eligible for it. You want to make sure that exemption comes off and you apply for the one that you are eligible for, keeping in mind that eventually if you don't notify us, at some point the district will realize through public records that you were not eligible for that. And they can go back as far as 5 years, and the law says we can go back as far as 5 years to actually charge you for those years, for those exemptions that you were receiving that you were not eligible for. So something important to keep in mind always when you move into a new home, it's always important to check on that. And this will be your annual reminder. The one thing I wanted to also talk about before we go, before I turn this back over to Nia, is we had a horrible kind of spring and some with all the storms and the Hurricane Beryl damage. And I mentioned to you early on, you'll recall that I said January 1st is typically the date of your appraisal. And whatever happens on January the 5th, you're still going to be appraised for what the condition of the property on January the 1st. Well, that's not the case if there is a declared disaster. Once the governor declares a disaster, there are some folks that are going to be eligible for something called a temporary exemption for property that's damaged by a disaster. You can get a temporary exemption for that year. There's some things that you would need to provide, remembering that the threshold for receiving that exemption is that there must be at least the physical damage to the property must be at least 15%. We do have an application on our website, HCAD website, for those forms. Some of the things that you're going to need if you are applying for a temporary disaster exemption is documentation that might include photographs of the property. If you filed any FEMA paperwork, as well as insurance claims and repair estimates, so that our appraisers can determine the extent of the damage to ratio to market value. Keep in mind, the deadline for if your property was damaged during the derecho storms, the deadline is coming up real soon. That's September the 3rd. If you're applying for damage done by Hurricane Beryl, the deadline is October 21st. There's always a 105-day deadline after the disaster declaration that you have to file it. And keep in mind, you may not have all of the information just yet, but if you think you're approaching that 15% threshold with your damage, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and file the exemption now. And then as things work out, you'll be able to see both the appraisal district and you will be able to see more clearly what that really amounts to. But keep in mind, those deadlines are coming up soon. This is what our website looks like. That's the landing page. I mentioned to you that second blue line, you go here towards the middle of the page where you have forms. You click on forms and those come up where you can provide and actually the temporary disaster exemption, I think, is on the front page as well right now, but you can find those online. Of course, there's the property search. There's also help at HCAD, where we have some interesting videos that are available. The other thing I wanted to mention while we're on the subject is that in just a few days, we will probably start recruiting for the 2025 Appraisal Review Board candidates. I mentioned to you that that's individual citizens who sit in those panels. If you're interested in that, those individuals, you can apply on our website. The form will be out there shortly, and you're interviewed and selected by, actually now, it used to be an administrative law judge. Beginning this year, you will be interviewed and selected by members of the HCAD board. So keep that in mind for anyone who you know that may be interested or may be an ideal candidate for the appraisal review board. Feel free to pass that along. And as I close out, this is our contact information. We're still out here on the Northwest Freeway at the Hollister-Tidwell exit. You don't have to come out, though. We try our best to kind of help you, as I mentioned, as I showed you through some of the slides, what you can do online, as well as give us a call, or you can go online and contact us through this hcad.org contact form. So that concludes my presentation today. As I said, Donna and I will be around to answer any questions. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Nia. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Ms. Shay Pinkowski with the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office.
Hi, Nia. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. My name is Shay. I'm here with the Harris County Tax Assessor's Office with Ms. Ann Harris Bennett. We are so excited to have you here today, and I'm just going to go ahead and try to jump into this presentation. If you have any questions for me and you decide to put them in the chat or ask here on the public forum, all we ask is that you keep your information as undetailed as possible. Make sure that you don't give away any private information. Just to ensure that you're not putting your information out there where it doesn't need to be. I'll put my contact information up at the end, so if you need to reach out, you can always reach out to me directly. But let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, perfect. Hopefully everyone can see that okay.
Yep, you're good.
Wonderful. Okay, so as I've mentioned before, we are with the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office with Miss Ann Harris Bennett. And right here is just kind of a really brief overview of what we service to Harris County. We do maintain about 1.7 million tax accounts, and we collect more than $8 billion in property taxes each year. Now, this does not all go to one office. This gets collected for multiple jurisdictions. We collect for 79 currently, and that can change year to year depending on what jurisdictions we are collecting for. Currently, some of those are including Harris County, Houston ISD, City of Houston, along with the Harris County Flood Control District. All of those taxes are collected by our office and distributed to those jurisdictions as required. In an effort to make it easy to calculate your tax bill or to understand how your tax bills are calculated, we do have this little visual display. We always start with your taxable value, which is appraised by the Harris Central Appraisal District in most cases for Harris County property owners. And that is multiplied by the tax rate, which is determined by our taxing jurisdictions. So each one of those jurisdictions will provide us with a tax rate by which we are required to multiply by the taxable value of your property in order to get what your total tax bill is for each jurisdiction. Since we collect for multiple, all of those jurisdictions that we collect for are added together and put into the same bill in order for you to not be receiving, however many 5-7 separate bills from separate assessor collectors. So that just makes it a little easier for everyone so that you have that bill with most of your jurisdictions on it. We have had a couple of recent changes, including some increases to exemptions for the over 65 and disabled exemption from 229,000 to 250,000. City of Houston has increased their over 65 and disabled exemption from 160 to 260, and the school general homestead exemption for ISDs have increased from 40,000 to 100,000. Homestead exemptions are eligible now from prorated date, meaning that if you purchase your property later on in the year as opposed to prior years of taxing where you would be applicable for that exemption from the first full year in which you were living in that property, they are now able to prorate that exemption. So it would start based off of when you apply and when you started living in that property, which has become a pretty big help because it does mean that you pay lower taxes sooner as opposed to having to wait for that first full year of having that property under your name. Some of the bill highlights that we had from this most recent Senate bills that were passed this past November included that homestead exemption for schools, which increased it from 40,000 to 100,000, as we mentioned earlier, along with increasing limit for appraisal on certain properties, and a restructure of this way that school taxes are processed. So the rate compressions have been changed and also became lower for property tax owners with that over 65 exemption on it. So it helped to decrease your taxes for that as well. This upcoming tax bill will be available starting in late October and throughout the rest of this year, just to kind of see what your taxes look like. we have an example of what our tax bill is, along with the important part that you should keep track of, which is your coupon, and that's going to be that bottom third of the page, which shows, of course, your property information, some notifications and messages to our taxpayers for your information, along with your information to make your taxes payable to. So that information will be there at the bottom or at the center of that page. And of course, your account number, along with how much you plan on paying in that coupon. And this is something that you would provide to our office whenever you make your payment, either through the mail or when you come into one of our branch offices to make your payment. That bill will assist you in making that transaction smoothly and efficiently. Let's see. We have a visual here for homestead exemption versus homestead and over 65 exemption, so that you can see truly what the differences are between having no exemptions or just one, or having both. So as you can see here, without a homestead exemption, a property with an appraisal value of $325,000 is approximately $7,153 for the property taxes. Whenever you have a homestead exemption on that property, you do end up saving a good bit of money of $1,830, and that reduces your bill based off of those exemptions. And with the over 65 or disabled exemption on a homesteaded property, you can see that the savings that you accrue are significant in comparison to just having the homestead exemption, or worse off, not having the exemptions at all. And as Ms. Mabel mentioned, these exemptions are not amounts that you pay back. This is a reduction to your taxes based off of eligibility, and it's not something that you would receive taxes on unless they are applied to an account in which they should not be applied to. So as long as you're eligible for those exemptions, we do recommend you going and applying for them, as they do make quite a difference on your bill. Ms. Mabel also mentioned our tax ceiling, or tax freeze, as they prefer to call it. This is a limitation to an increase in how much you would pay for your school taxes. So some jurisdictions also accept it, but in this case, for schools is our most popular, or more common rather. And those taxing limitations put a ceiling or a freeze based off of how much you pay your taxes for that first year in which that exemption applies. That freeze does not get passed, so it will not collect more on that property if you have a freeze, but it can collect less. However, as Ms. Mabel also mentioned, this is not applicable if there is a large difference in the cost of the property itself, or the appraisal of the property itself, meaning that if there are great changes that are not, run-of-the-mill maintenance, then that can be edited to apply properly. So just keep that in mind whenever you're making those changes. One of the other really highly recommended courses of action for our over 65 homeowners is the tax deferral. And the best way that I can explain the tax deferral is almost as if it were an insurance policy for yourself. And that is because when the tax deferral is on the property, you are still required to make payment. You are still owing that amount. However, you are given additional time in which you can make these payments, and it reduces your interest for the year on those payments. So it's a postponement of tax, meaning that you are able to take additional time in which to make these payments and still be able to maintain your house. It does not delay, or it does not cancel taxes. It is only a delay of taxes. And these deferrals are applicable through the Harris Central Appraisal District on homestead residences for property owners who are over 65, disabled, or disabled veterans. So keep in mind whenever you are applying for the deferral that you consult with your mortgage company, because some mortgage companies are not accepting tax deferrals on accounts. So make sure that you confer with them first if you do still owe money on that home, so that you do not, make moves that are not applicable to you. for your mortgage company. We also offer flexible payment plans for property owners, regardless of whether or not this is your home, um, or whether this is a rental or whatever the case may be. We offer 12, 24, 36-month payment plans, and they can be paid off early. There are no attorney's fees so long as the payment plan is created prior to the law firm beginning collections on the accounts, and it helps you to avoid collection efforts or foreclosure actions. And this can be begun as early as your first delinquent date. So this can be started as early as February 1st in most cases. One of the options that we have, another of the options that we have for our over 65 property owners here is called a quarterly payment plan. This is applicable towards homesteads for over 65 owners, along with disabled veteran or surviving spouse. And this is in order to assist with making those payments if you need just a bit more time, as opposed to paying everything up front in one whole payment at the end of January. You are given time in which to make those 4 equal installment payments. Starting at the end of January, when the first initial bill is due, you would pay the first quarter, with the second, third, and fourth being paid at the end of March, May, and July. There is no interest so long as these 4 payments are maintained timely, and the account must be approved with an over 65 and homestead exemption prior to us being able to apply this quarterly payment to the account. So this isn't applicable if the property has not already been applied with the homestead and over 65, but once it is for that year, then you would be applicable for that quarterly payment plan. And it is something you would just have to call our office and request if that is something that is applicable to you. For further information on our regular payment plans or payment agreements is listed here below in case this information applies to you. Property owners can do so whether they are living in the property or whether they are not living in the property, and the only difference would be in the accrued penalty and interest. So as I mentioned before, both types of plans are available between 12, 24, 36 months. The homestead plan is in reference to, of course, property in which you live and reside in. There is a 1% interest per month along with the initial penalty month, meaning that depending on when you create your payment plan will depend on how much penalty and how much penalty is being accrued on the account, and 1% of interest per month. There is the difference in the non-homesteaded payment agreements, and that is that penalty and interest will accrue as normal when this property is not as a homestead and you are paying for a penalty or a payment agreement. That penalty will continue to accrue as usual, but the only thing that would assist with is avoiding litigation and attorney's fees, so long as that payment plan is created prior to the attorney's fee, the law firm beginning collection on the account. In the case of both, it can be applied to current and previous years, and these payments are due at the end of each month, before the end of the month. We have our payment options listed here. You are able to pay online, in person, by mail, by telephone, or by appointment if you prefer to do so. Our offices are all over Harris County. We have 15 separate locations, and we are able to take in cash in our branch offices as well as by appointment. So we do also accept card payments. However, please be aware that when you're paying with a physical card, there is an additional fee of 2.45%, and that is for debit and credit alike. You are able to pay with an e-check. An e-check does not have that additional fee, and e-checks are payable online through our website. And if you have any questions about that, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. But our website is www.hctax.net. And what I do recommend is if you are curious about whether your bill has been prepared or whether it is ready yet, as I mentioned earlier, it does begin around the end of October this year. Please check on our website for your bill. That is going to be the quickest way, because as soon as it becomes available, it does go onto our website and becomes available for viewing there. It's very fast, easy, and you can print it directly off of there and send that into us with your payment to pay your taxes. So, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that is a very fast and efficient way of being able to search for your taxing information, along with verifying your address and which address those tax bills are going to be going to. We do have our contact information listed out here. There's our website along with our email address and our phone number if you would like to reach out to call us with any questions that are pertaining to your account. This is the phone line in which you were to be able to call to ask very specific questions, should you have any of them. But as we mentioned before, I'll try to assist as best as I can with any questions that might occur here. That way I can keep an eye out on the chat, as well as if there's any coming in from Facebook. But I was so glad to be able to come by today and be able to have this talk with you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're very happy to help you. And I'll go ahead and turn this over to Nia.
All righty. Thank you very much, Shay. Let me go back to the chat and see what questions we got here. Let me get to the ones that were actually emailed to me first. What are the pros and the cons of contesting your property tax value? Well, you went over the pros. What are some of the cons? Are there any cons to protesting?
So protesting is normally done through the Harris Central Appraisal District. So as far as pros, it is, the way to protest the value of your property. If they do agree and there is something that can be done about it, then those appraisal values do get reduced. So in total, you might end up paying less taxes because that appraisal value is reduced. So whenever that appraisal value is reduced, that's what the taxing values are based off of. So that's, one of the pros. The cons is, of course, it does take time to go through the process itself. And, the actual process itself can be time consuming, and, depending on how many people would be involved in it, there might be some additional research that needs to be created.
Oh.
But as far as the process itself, that would most likely be more of a Mabel question, or the appraisal district question, since they're the ones who normally are going through that process.
Donna, can you or Ms. Mabel refer back to that question? But really quick, Shay, can you put your address back up again? Was that the last one that you want?
The
your
email address?
Yeah, your contact page.
Yeah, give me 1 second. There we go. Should be up now.
Donna, can you think of any other cons for protesting property taxes?
I think there's more, honestly, more pros, because, it's, how I look at it as a property owner, what do I have to lose? And so, there's just things to remember when you're protesting the market value. So things that matter are things that are happening on your property that the appraisal district may not know. We're such a huge district. So if there's repairs that need to be done, if you have repair estimates and you have pictures, and so I highly encourage, property owners to file a protest. And the cons, it's kind of what Shay said. It takes time, but honestly, like Mabel talked about, we have iFile, iSettle now, which is great because you don't even have to have that informal. The iSettle appraisers review your protest, everything that you submit with it, and then they see if they can make you an offer. And then you can accept or decline it. If you decline it, then you can actually have a formal ARB meeting. But what's important to remember is I need my market value to go down below my appraised value. Because remember, the tax offices use the appraised value to do the taxes. So I need to show supporting evidence that for my market value, I'm going to have to do all these repairs to get it to that market value so that they would consider going below my appraised value. Because if I get my market below my appraised value, it lowers my taxes.
And I'll just mention too, Donna, that for some of us, if you can get it lowered 6,000-7,000, and it may not be to your market value, then that just starts you out the following year at that lower market value for any increases. Right? So it's a little bit of a satisfaction thing when you can do that too.
So, yeah.
Okay, there's a follow-up question here in the audience here. Hold on just a second.
Notice in the chat that it's talking about HCID 10, which I got in the mail. And I put in there, I know it's about another jurisdiction to be added, but what I'm trying to figure out, I typed on another to do an appeal. So what is that about? Can someone explain that? Because I've got another letter that I want to ask about, but the HCID 10, because they were talking about putting a levy on your house and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know what that's going on, that's what the letter said. So I just put on there to appeal that, because I don't know what it is or what to do about it.
Did you hear the question, Ms. Mabel?
Yeah, I think if I heard the question correctly, she's referring to a letter that went out to the folks in Sunnyside on the creation of a new jurisdiction.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the letter from HCAD probably, I'm just gonna say, was probably bad timing, since the folks out there in Sunnyside didn't know anything about a new jurisdiction being created, or you guys hadn't received any communication about it. But essentially, it's one of those management improvement districts that that some of the commercial property owners in the district can opt into. And those kind of management improvement districts are usually for things like things that the city does not necessarily pay for, but are things that make the neighborhood more attractive to bring in businesses. I'm going to use a really outsized one, a bit wider sidewalks, or the really outsized one, if I compare it to some of the neighborhoods like the Galleria has one of those, for instance. And you got those statues and things, and it's designed for the commercial property owners to be assessed. What happened here, and this is the best I can tell, because again, I'm not, other than the role that HCAD plays in it, I don't know very much about this new jurisdiction at all, because again, it is a taxing authority. We simply assess, set market values at HCAD so that they can assess the taxes. But it is a new jurisdiction. It's apparently been around for a while, but they decided it's just now getting up and going. And they're going to assess they're going to assess those commercial property owners who opt into it for 2023. So the reason this letter was sent out was because it has to be a correction. In other words, the people that belong on there, that they need to send it to, and it's saying to the property owners out there, you're part of this district. And unfortunately, it doesn't really say that, but for you residential property owners, you are part of the district, of this management district, but you are not going to have to pay anything. We just need to make sure that we send this out to all of the property owners who are within this district. It's only going to be assessed, from my understanding, to commercial property owners. And there's some information on that when you go to that info@sunnysidetexas.org website. that sort of confirms this. So if you are a residential property owner, it's apparently this goes out to all of you, but you are not, it's gonna show up on your bill that you're part of this management district, but there's gonna be a zero value to it. No, but you won't be billed for it. That is my understanding. You can get, from what I understand, the jurisdiction, the management district is in the process of getting more information out to the homeowners out in Sunnyside about it.
But for questions, I see Donna putting there that the administrative assistance phone number
Right.
involved in CID is 832-350-8163 or email info@sunnysidetx.org.
And there is gonna be a notice when you go out there and look at their website. There's gonna be a notice that pops up that they put out there because of the correction letter that we sent out, sort of explaining it. But it does say, you may confirm that you received the notice and return it to they say tax office, which is incorrect. It should be the appraisal district. But you can send that in or not, particularly if you're a residential homeowner, because it is not designed as a tax for homes.
Got it. Was there another question that you had?
About second letter that I got, so I don't know if that's a part of it or not. But it's called appraisal review board.
The ARB board?
Appraisal review board. Yeah, this is what I got second. After that, it says order of the appraisal review board, and they've got all this stuff for me to fill out.
Oh, or had you protested already? Or filed a protest?
O'Connor and Associates that protested. I sent them this letter and they said you're on your own. So I'm like.
When someone receives a letter from the ARB board with forms to fill out, what does that mean? Is it?
I don't know. I'd have to see the letter. It depends on
Oh.
what their business was before the appraisal review board as to what they were filling out. Donna, do you have any insight into that? Because that's between the appraisal review board and the property owner at that point.
Yes, we're separate from the appraisal review board, but I know of them sending out board orders, you know, when you had a protest, you had a formal hearing, then they do send you the, you know, the determination of the orders of what was determined at the hearing. But I don't know one about questions, so I would recommend contacting whoever the letter was from, you know, to get more information.
The appraisal review board.
They're actually
Binding and all this kind of stuff.
About going to arbitration. I believe that's like the next step if you didn't agree with what happened at the review board. I think that's maybe like what the next step is, to go to arbitration after, if you didn't agree with what happened at the hearing.
yeah.
Yes,
that's
that
correct.
could be it. That could be it.
Yeah. Okay. Someone had asked the question. Where's it at here? Oh, can't find it now all of a sudden. Oh, I just closed it. Goodness. About putting what impact or what effect does your property taxes have on putting your current residence in a trust?
Oh,
Do you know
Melissa
if,
can answer that one.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Melissa,
Mabel, are you answering that?
no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
That is a very good question. And you can put an account in a trust. However, there are property tax code laws where your trust has to state that you can occupy your residence rent-free. I mean, if it ended up not, you can always have it amended, and on our website under help tab, there is laws and rules link, and there is a property tax code there. But basically, whoever's doing your trust, they need to be aware that in Texas, to continue to have your exemptions on your account, you need to make sure it has that verbiage that you can occupy your residence rent-free. And then what we need to do is, because what happens is all of a sudden you put that ownership into the name of the trust, and we cannot have exemptions going to a trust. So your exemptions are then set to non-renew in that year, and we remove them next year. But because the property tax code does have, what do you say? Help in situations like this, that if you have that verbiage, we need you to reapply because we need to reinstate your exemptions. We need a copy of your driver's license, and we need a copy of the trust, and it has to have that verbiage in it. So then what we do as the appraisal district is we put the account back in your names, we document the trust, and we put in the mail to the trust name. So then your exemptions can remain. So that's very important to know. You definitely can put a property in the name of a trust, but you also have to make sure it follows that stipulation that wherever it talks about your residence, that you can occupy it rent-free. And then you'll want to get with, the appraisal district on the specifics. So I did put back in the chat my email, but
Can you read it aloud for the folks that can't see the chat, Donna?
do what?
Can you say it out loud for the folks that?
Oh,
that
yeah.
can't see the
My last name's kind of hard, but it's D for Donna. So just the initial D, and then P is in Paul, S is in Sam, E is in Edward, N is in Nancy, CIK at hcad.org. And you're more than welcome to email me. And we also have a web form online that you can fill out also and ask the same question. But so basically you can put, we need the deed that puts it into the name of the trust. You'll want to reapply for your exemptions, and you'll put, you want them to reinstate it because it's remained your homestead. So you don't want to lose your exemptions. So.
Got it. Okay. I was just double checking the chat and the comment sections to make sure we didn't have any other questions. But that was about it. And y'all got through that pretty quickly. Typically, we kind of run it up to the third hour to try to get the questions answered here. Did you guys have any questions directly that you?
Excuse me, ma'am. I have a question that to me is,
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to
Ms. Middleton.
type it in.
Okay, Ms. Littleton, just a second. Someone else was answering a question. Just
Okay.
hold that real quick.
Okay.
Don't have any dwelling on the property. Does it assess for the land for as much as, another property that may have a dwelling on the property?
Does
that even, with your land?
Does the land value change if there's a dwelling on it versus it just being a vacant lot?
Those are actually done separately.
Yeah, so but does it make a difference? Does it impact? So is the land value more if there's a dwelling on it, or less if there's no dwelling there?
Oh, see, I don't know. I'd have to ask an appraiser. Donna, do you know? There could be a number of factors that could cause the land value to increase. And it could be because of the type of properties that are surrounding the land. So it's really hard for me to say. Donna, do you have,
No, it would depend on the property. Because like Mabel said, when we're appraising, we have a land value and we have the building value. So like in my mom's neighborhood, she has these huge homes going up, 500 to $1 million, but her home is only worth 13,000. But her land is worth like, I don't know, 450,000 or 500,000 for land, right? So really the land and the dwelling are different. I don't know that just because you have a dwelling on there, that seems to be the question, if that dwelling increases the value of the land, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know they're valued separately.
and in some cases, as Donna mentioned, it's gonna be the land that is being bought out at a higher market value as opposed to the dwelling. So as I said before, it's gonna depend on, it depends on where you are and what the market is doing in that area.
So even like land accounts, people have to protest that. And they have to look for comparable sales, that size of land and what it's used for. So yeah, but they are appraised separate. And then they come up with the market value with both of those, the land and the house value. So
I
yeah.
didn't think about that, about protesting land value if it's empty lots. I don't think we ever really touch on that too much. We always kind of talk about homestead and protest and homestead, but
Because we always talking residential.
because people in the area are willing to pay that much for your lot because it's vacant. So you'd be surprised at what they're looking. And you can protest the land value. Yeah. Okay. Ms. Littleton, you had a question you said?
Yes, in turning 65 after January and you've paid your taxes and the exemption went in on the new bill about the school tax that you would be exempt from once you turn 65 and you have applied for exemption. Is there a refund if you paid the total amount of the taxes, or you won't see it until the next year? Say you paid your bill this year and you turned 65. Well, you turned 65 last year. You paid your taxes all in full in January. Those new tax exemption for the school with the housing, do you get a refund for paying it the entire tax, or it doesn't count until the end of this year and you'll see a difference?
So as far as the exemption goes, that exemption becomes applicable, and correct me if I'm wrong, HCAD, but that exemption becomes applicable when the year you turn 65. So say you have a birthday at the end of the year, November, December, whenever, and you turn 65 at the end of the year, but you don't apply for that exemption until after you've paid your taxes for that year. So just referencing 2023, you paid your 2023 taxes in January of this year, 2024. So now you're waiting for those changes to be applied to the account with your over 65 and homestead. Is that correct? So far?
Right.
Okay, perfect. So you do, once the exemption gets applied to your account, get a refund. So what essentially happens is you applied for your refund. If they apply the refund for last year, 2023, and then forward, you would have a refund for any overpayments made to 2023 taxes. And then 2024, so long as it was applied to the account with enough time to be released on this bill, would be applied, and you would be getting your this upcoming bill due in January of 2025, you would receive that bill with the homestead and over 65 exemption already applied. But yes, you would receive a refund for overpayments if that previous year gets changed.
Does she have to apply for it, or she just automatically receive it?
So it depends on whether or not they had her date of birth on file whenever she applied for her homestead exemption. And that, again, correct me if I'm wrong, HCAT, but that's going to depend on whether they were aware or had a reference of when her date of birth was. Because I know in some situations they go forward because they have the information on hand, they have it on file, so they apply it when they have it. But if they did not have that information on file and they had no idea of when her date of birth would be, then she would need to go in and apply for it.
Right. That's why we always continue to remind folks to go ahead and apply for the exemption, because there was a period, probably a decade or two ago, when people did not have to put their age on their applications. So there's a whole spot of time where we don't know it. Newer applications have that information, so we can go ahead and process it automatically. But if you've been a homeowner for some time, it's probably a good idea to just go ahead and file for it, because we may not have that info.
Okay, let me clarify something. Now, because taxes are paid in arrears, in 2024, she paid 2023 taxes. If she wasn't turning 65 until 2024, would there be a refund due for 2023?
No.
No, so if she turned 26 or she turned 65 in 2024, like say January of 2024, she would be applicable for that exemption for 2024 tax year forward.
Okay,
So then she would not receive a refund because she would have not paid for 2024 taxes yet. She'll pay for 2024 taxes at the earliest November of this year, approximately.
and the exemption will be applied to this year's tax bill that's due for 2024, 2025.
For that's due in 2025 for 2024.
Yeah.
Now, she was saying,
Okay.
Nia, that she turned 65 in 2023.
Right, right.
Okay,
I was
yeah.
just getting clarification to make sure, so
Okay.
that there's no confusion there, to make sure that once you turned, you get it for that year, not a previous year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Miss Menifee, when you said the old application did not have a section for age on there, so if you were already getting homestead exemption and you turn 65, you do need to go back and reapply and let them know that you are 65, because starting that homestead, you did not get, they didn't have an age. So you need to go back and let them know, hey, I'm 65 now, homestead exemption.
That is always a good idea, Miss Littleton. Yeah, at least for the time being. Once the calendar catches up with us, where the most of the applications out there all now have that, will be fine. But because it wasn't always so, it's a good idea to go ahead and apply for it, just to be sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Generally, when do those postcards go out that tell you what exemptions are on your accounts? So she'll know when to look for it, if it's there or not.
Late December, early January.
So if you receive that postcard, Ms. Littleton, during that time frame and that exemption is not there, you definitely want to call back again.
So they should say the exemption for 65 on it, because I do get the card every year.
If you haven't applied for it, it may not. As we were just kind of discussing, if we didn't have that information, we would just, your whatever exemption you already had on there might continue. So you want to go ahead and apply for that. If we had the information, then we can now go ahead and automatically place that over 65 if we had your birth date, but we may not. So it's always a good idea to just double check.
Do it.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Thank
not
you
gonna
all.
hurt you to do it, just to go ahead and do it. And I don't know, Miss Littleton, if you have a cell phone, I have that same exemption, and when I applied for it recently, it was easy peasy on that mobile app on my cell phone. Much more so than I anticipated.
Okay, so is it quicker on the cell phone than doing it on the
You can
computer? Because
download the I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm not one for putting all my information on the cell phone, so I like to do it on the computer. So it's still gonna get there? Is it a little slower or best to
So
do it on the cell?
you can fill out the form online, and just kind of send that in, and it's not actually, the mobile app is faster. And by the way, you're going to be downloading the HCAD's mobile app, so it's going to come straight to HCAD. So you're not putting out there, in cyberspace so much.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just sure.
Okay, for clarification, are there any exemptions for just over 65 property owners that just have other properties? Or is it only for your homestead exemption?
Oh,
Or are the
uh,
exemptions only for your homestead
well, Shay
or
talked
any
about
kind of
tax
reduction?
deferral, as well as, for folks who, I don't think I talked about this, but this year, part of the, referendum that everyone voted on back in November, when they raised the, school tax exemption to $100,000 from 40,000, there was also something in that bill called a circuit breaker. And because they can't call it an exemption. But basically that circuit breaker, which really is an exemption, is for individuals who own property, commercial, rental, or whatever, if as long as it's not a homestead or as long as it's not agricultural property, they can now get $20,000 exemption.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, a $20,000 cap on their property. And that was designed, and it's only a 3-year pilot project. That amount has already been applied to those commercial properties. So if their values rose more than $20,000 in last year, they were capped at that amount. So that's not really, that's like a cap that you get with the exemptions. Like you get that 10% cap with the general resident homesteader over 65. You get this 20% cap with other properties that don't apply to that aren't eligible for a homestead exemption. I think we talked
20
about that one.
20% or 20,000?
It's 20%. Hold on a second. I didn't put that slide
And
in.
then, so would a property owner have to then apply for that, or
No,
what happens?
that's already been baked into that's already baked into their account for this year.
And for the 2024 year?
For 2024?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you own other property out there, as long as it's less than $5 million, you will get that 20% cap. Donna, you have anything else to add to that? You've probably been answering questions about that all year.
Oh, she says no.
Maybe not.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. But yeah, that just kind of has just been baked into all the applicable accounts for that.
Okay. All right. Is there any other
And
questions?
I just want to go down here and make sure I've given you the appropriate information there, because I was running off of memory. It's a 20% cap, and it is being automatically applied to non-homesteaded properties valued at below 5 million for 2024. And the appraised value for the current year, meaning the appraised value for the current year cannot exceed 20% of the appraised value for the preceding year, for last year. And that has already been applied to those accounts.
Okay.
However, for those individuals who they must have owned the property by January the 1st of 2023. Anything they bought during 2023, they're not eligible for this. They had to have owned it by January 1st of 2023. The idea behind this one, I don't know how many of you followed the legislative session last year, was the idea behind this was to try to give landlords a break of some sort because of the rapidly increasing values and the rapidly increasing rents that they would hopefully pass along to tenants. Hopefully that's happening.
So if
That was the
you
legislature's idea behind that.
so if it's property that you just purchased, so moving forward, you don't get that cap. It's only for that property that was owned prior to 2023.
See, I knew you were going to ask that, and I'm not quite sure what it's a 3-year pilot project. So I guess the legislature is going to see how it works for these 3 years. And I would imagine, yeah, once they owned it for a full year this year, that they may be eligible next year for that cap, though I'm not certain. I would have to check on that. But it's I guess coming up at the next legislative session, they're going to have to look at whether or not they're going to renew that or not.
Okay, so that what you're looking at, Miss Mabel, could you send it to me so that way I can include it in the email that I send out to the folks? So
Sure,
just
I'll
in
send
case
you that.
some other people have property that are not on today, that they'll have that information when I send the email out.
Sure will.
Okay. All right. I don't believe we have any other questions. We're good to go. All right. Thank y'all very much. Ms. Mabel, Ms. Donna, Ms. Shay, appreciate y'all getting on and providing this information to the community. We want to thank you guys on behalf of A Month of Service for the partnership, as well as for all of our participants that join us for coming out and continuing to support A Month of Service. If there are currently any workshops that we do not offer that you all may be interested in, or you find that there's a topic that is that has come up that is of importance to people, to you and folks in your community, then please reach out to Rachel or myself and let us know, and we can see about getting it put on the schedule for you guys. So if something else comes up, let us know. And we've got your contact information there, and we'll send you out an email so you'll have all of our information to reach out to us as well in the future. So I will be sending out an email of a link of this recording for everybody so that you can go back and actually watch it, along with some other resources and links to different websites and things like that, including those for HCAT and the assessor's office and the city, so that you guys can have that and know who to reach out to. Yami, is she going to be with us for our future?
Yes, next week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, our next in-person session is going to be next Thursday, the 5th of September at the Third Ward Multi-Service Center. Will be our Wills and Advanced Legal Planning workshop, where we will have an attorney with Lone Star Legal Aid to provide information about what actually makes up an estate plan, the importance of having a will, dispelling those myths and things behind creating a will or an estate plan. In addition to that, we will be providing the residents or the community with the templates that make up an estate plan so that you can create your own documents or have the opportunity to apply with our legal service partners like Lone Star and Earl Carl and Houston Volunteer Lawyers, and complete a pre-assessment to see if you guys can qualify to have those organizations provide a will and estate plan for you guys. So feel free to come out and join us next Thursday. I just forgot just that fast. Next Thursday at 1 p.m. at the Third Ward Service Center. Did you want to add?
Yes, we definitely want to encourage those individuals to come in person, so that not only you are able to get the information to better educate and empower yourself, but also to take advantage of the services that are going to be provided by the legal aid agencies in person at Third Ward. Also, please look out for the schedule for a month of service for the month of September. The schedule will be posted on the NRCDC website for the workshops that we are offering for that month. And then also our coffee and conversation will be in person here at Sunnyside. September 24th. Yes. So we'll be back at Sunnyside September 24th in person. So please make sure that you check out the schedule and also share the information to those individuals that are in your network. And then I think that's it.
It's pro se,
question
and answer.
So yes, the coffee and conversation for September 24th is Pro Se Day, which basically means the documents that if you are preparing your estate plan on your own and need just to have a quick check over of the documents that you prepared, the legal aid agencies will be there to be able to guide you through that process. So if you're one of those self-sufficient individuals that, you know, hey, I got my information, my documents already filled out, and I just need to take a look to make sure all the boxes are checked, that opportunity is there for that day on September 24th.
Okay.
Yep.
In addition to that, our other Amos partners will also be there, including HCAD and the Tax Assessor Collector's Office. So if you all have questions about your exemptions or forms or something like that you want to have somebody to look over, whatever, you'll have the opportunity to get those questions answered in a one-on-one kind of setting with them as well. So and also for those folks that do income qualify, you'll be able to do your intake process with legal service organizations while you're there to apply for their services too. So come out and basically join our month of service partners at the coffee and conversation on the 28th at 10 a.m. So we hope to see y'all there. Again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon and continuing to support a month of service. We hope you all have a wonderful remainder of your afternoon. Take care of yourselves and you stay safe, and we will see y'all next time.
Thank you so much. Have a great